The same thing on my side, the lending side is there's a lot of people who are first time home buyers
Yeah.
and they have the champagne taste on a beer budget. Man, it's raw, it's
Yeah.
uncut, man. So everything goes, doesn't
That's okay.
matter. It's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, man, I reached out to you because I know we've did a deal where
Yeah.
I think his name was Charles and he had bought like a new construction and it was different, man. It was definitely different. Uh, Unique. I'd say very
It
unique.
was. And every buyer and seller is unique. We
Yeah,
all
yeah,
know
yeah.
that in this industry, whether you're a lender or a real estate agent. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I wanted to reach out, man, because I mean, I know you and I are friends on social media,
for sure.
and I know you kill it, man. You do you're heavy listing, man, but I mean, you put a lot of content out, which I love. It's cool. You're active, which is really
Yeah.
cool. But I wanted to bring you on, man, because I wanted to kind of pick your brain because you're on the Kentucky side, I'm on the
Mhm.
Tennessee side, even
Yeah.
though we're not too far away from each other, just two totally different markets,
Yeah, for
totally
sure.
different.
For sure.
Yeah.
My
So,
parents actually they bought a house in Clarksville.
okay.
Uh, and it was a little bit of a nightmare situation with the
Yeah.
lending side. My dad just went with a bank that he's got a lot of rapport with. He's
Yeah,
had
yeah.
a business, all his
Mhm.
accounts with his motel. He's gotten reoccurring HELOCs with him and
Yeah,
this and
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Like, okay, I'm gonna buy a house. I'm gonna go with them.
Yeah.
It was more of a nightmare than I ever thought. So it is different for sure
Yeah.
from Tennessee to Kentucky, even though
Hmm.
he used a Kentucky lender that still is able to do business in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Just a lot of things that my dad did not expect, especially with the type of rapport he had with that bank.
Yeah. And man, and that's going to be the thing is um, never to bash a bank. It's just when it comes to a bank versus like a traditional lender, man, it's just the skill sets, to be fair. It's totally different, man. Because you got to think banks, they don't just hold mortgages. Like they don't just do mortgages. They do a little bit of everything. Rather than
Checking
me, man.
statements,
Yeah.
HELOCs, everything. Yes.
Yeah. So,
The rules and regulations obviously are a lot different.
yeah.
Obviously, you're mastering your trade because all you do is home loans.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and so I understand, from that perspective, again, I guess he's more traditional. He's never bought a house.
Sure.
And so, I forewarned him,
Mm,
the process as far as what you have to have up front, what you have to provide them as far as documentation goes.
hmm.
Like a traditional person's not used to that. It's like, hey, I know I'm good for it. Give
Yeah.
me the money. Let's get the ball rolling. And
Yeah.
it's not like that. And obviously, for you all, the same thing. It's not like that
Yeah.
in any at least. It used to be. It's not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles now, man. And it's just really, from the lending side, it's just, can we articulate and can we explain it to the client and kind of not jokingly say, we break it down Barney style so you understand exactly why we're needing it.
Right.
And without, because, a lot of people from my side is I get a lot of kickback on, well, why do you need this document? I already gave it to you. I was like, well, this document triggered this. And I was like, you can either give it to me now or the underwriter's just going to tell me to do the same thing. So it's kind
And
of
it,
like, pick your poison.
and you're not. I think that a lot of respect
Yeah.
for that for your perspective of letting people know in advance because
Yeah.
a lot of my buyers they're like, man, these lenders are asking me these things last minute,
Yeah.
and it's like sometimes like for getting things from your employer,
Yeah.
it's not going to take a day or two. It may take a week.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
as a lender being able to inform them way ahead of time, it's like, okay, I mentioned that to you
Yeah.
because I know sometimes it's going to take some time.
Mm.
It's up to you whether or not you get it to me in a timely manner.
Yeah. And so I try to, well, before we kind of go forward, man, I'll let you introduce yourself just so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
you can kind of let everybody know how you started, the market that you take over in Kentucky, because it seems like it, man, you had this, I remember this lake house that you were selling. I was like, dude, this thing is banging. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, and those are few and far between.
yeah,
Obviously that's the goal for as a real estate agent to
yeah.
try to get the higher end luxury homes. But as far as what I do, how I
Yeah.
started, I was you feel a lot of, I guess you say, gratitude
Mm,
when you start helping just anybody and
yeah.
everybody.
Oh,
As you
100%.
grow in a business, which I've been doing this for 6 years now,
Mm.
started in 2019, of course.
Hey, you and
And
I do. You and I both. Yeah.
yeah. So we're
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
timeline.
Yeah.
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 So as I started growing, obviously my goal was to, be able to attract those buyers and sellers because I'm more of an expert at what I do.
Sure.
Not saying that I would be stereotyping like, oh, I don't want to help somebody that only can afford $100,000 property or two
Right.
hundred
Right.
dollar property
Sure.
or only wants to sell those types
Right.
of properties. As I started, though, that was what I felt a bit more comfortable with,
Sure.
just mainly because I didn't think there was a lot of risk, even though it is a big step for somebody to sell a
Hmm.
unit. When you get to the half a million or $1 million homes, there's a
It's
lot more,
different.
and yeah, commission
Yeah.
wise, you're potentially making more money as long
Yeah.
as it sells or the buyer ends up buying.
Hmm.
So there's a lot more invested in those because I think as a seller, they expect that if they're going to pay, for example, a 3% commission
Right.
uh, on a $500,000 home, that's $15,000 compared to a $100,000 home, which is $3,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, when I started, I was getting those lower price ones, which again, that's how I got to the point I am now because it
Hmm.
helped build more confidence in myself. And then you learn different marketing tactics,
Yeah.
different advertising tactics as you do more.
Yeah.
Uh, so after 6 years, of course, I've hired two people. One is basically a buyer's agent, co-agent.
There you go.
She helps me on some of my listings that may be a little bit more time consuming.
Sure.
Uh, and then I have a marketing girl. Kind of hence the reason why I've really, I guess you'd say, implemented a lot more into my social media strategy.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work.
Hey.
As well as I do.
Yeah.
People don't realize I don't love doing it. I think my girlfriend would probably say otherwise, but she thinks I love social media because I'm always on it. Um,
But it's a
it's not that
necessity, man, in our
it is.
industry. It is.
It is part of my job, and sometimes you can get distracted from what you need to do through social
Yeah.
media. Obviously, you're gonna, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, you're scrolling. You're not just scrolling for business because you'll see other random stuff that you follow.
Yeah.
You get
Yeah.
very distracted.
Hmm.
And I think that's my biggest problem is when I'm utilizing social media, I'm also like getting distracted doing other things through social media rather than what's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what she probably gets upset. She's like, "You're not actually working. You're just scrolling through other stuff." So, with that being said, having those two people, having my co-agent and then my marketing girl, it's definitely helped revamp my business to understand what modern marketing and advertising is. And I think every
Yeah.
business needs it, not just the real estate or the lending business, but
Yeah.
any.
No, for sure, man. And I think you bring up a pretty valid point. I think pretty much for most people, man, like you and I, right? When I first started, it's the same thing. The houses I would lend on would be like the 150s, the 180s, the 200s. And I mean, but back then that was kind of the norm here because anything like at 300K was like a big deal. It was
Yeah,
anything 300K and above was a big deal. Now, 300K is a norm. Like that's the standard. 350 is a norm.
yeah,
So I definitely know, where you're coming from that aspect where it takes time to build up to get to where, at the point of our careers where you and I are at.
yeah.
So
It's a stepping stone. I think in any
yeah,
business, again, when you do more, people have more confidence in you.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, you and I probably both agree on the reason why our business is built is because of word of mouth. I mean,
yeah,
the main reason why most businesses grow, 80% of the reason I feel like is because of word of mouth. So you start getting other people that you've had great experiences with
yeah,
referred to by those people that you've helped. And
right,
I think that's what's continued to help you elevate even more is
for
not
sure,
just social media marketing or there's not really print ads or radio ads, but word of mouth. That's
right.
how we've gotten where we are after 6 years.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. So, and like I said, man, kudos to you because I know you've definitely you kill it, man. You really
Yeah,
do. And I'm not just saying that to, just to say it. You
yeah,
do extremely
yeah.
good work.
Appreciate
Yeah.
the like I said the compliment as far
Yeah.
as that goes. And of course, at the end of the day, I do have help.
Right.
but consistency, that's, I
Yeah.
think that anything, I've just been
Sure.
very consistent. I do this full time. I'm sure you are a lender full time.
Yep. Yep.
And I think that makes a huge difference too. There's a lot of people in this industry that do real estate part time, and I think that's another big value that I bring to the
Hmm.
table is night or day.
Yeah.
I try to have downtime hours,
Right.
but regardless, I treat this as if this is my bread and butter, which it is.
Yeah.
I think that's some people value that too because they know that hey, he's not going to be distracted by a second or a third job.
Yeah, and I think you can definitely kind of see the difference in the kind of quality agent and lending, where you can kind of see it's just not their super main focus. I mean, it is a big focus for them, but it's not their main gig, and
Sure.
so they're trying to balance two different worlds, and again, you may not get that quality customer service that
Mhm.
realistically that they should be getting, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, so let me pick your brain, man. So, like,
Yeah.
when you go to a listing appointment, right? What does that exactly look like? Because obviously, I know it's probably word of mouth.
Mhm.
Referrals are heavy,
Yep.
but let's say you're going to a listing appointment initially. Are there things that you are like a non-negotiable for you? Like, meaning, are there things that you're like, hey, I'm willing to do this, but I'm going to need you to do this, and it's a non-negotiable?
So I guess yes and no.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when you get a listing, that's what most agents want nowadays.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
not that we don't want to help buyers. Sometimes buyers can be time consuming.
Yeah.
To where when you get a listing appointment, if you get that listing, it's more guaranteed business. Not saying that a buyer is not necessarily loyal, but yes, on a listing appointment, sometimes there are certain things that I will say, hey, even though I love getting listings,
Right.
there are certain things that I won't negotiate beyond. And one of
Sure.
those things, and I think this is pretty common, is overpricing. Um,
Fair.
so I go to a listing appointment already doing some preliminary research. There's a lot of public information you can find out about a home
Right.
once that seller gives you their address.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of times when you go to a listing appointment, depending on your relationship, so you have to take that in consideration too. Some people trust you more out of the gate because they know you because of
Right.
word of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
let's just say they found me on Facebook or Instagram or Zillow or Google, whatever.
Sure.
Um, that approach is a little bit different because I'm trying to build that connection. I don't want to intimidate a client by saying, hey, I'm not willing to do this, or this
Right.
because you're not willing to do this. A lot of times you have to, God gave us two ears and one mouth for a reason. Um, Sometimes you have to keep an open mind, go there, listen to the seller, evaluate the entire conversation. And then at the end of the day, sometimes you don't ever say you waste time. Sometimes it's the experience that leads you to learn more on your future endeavors and
Sure.
listening appointments. But at the end of the day, what I typically do is I make sure that we have realistic expectations. And I just had a conversation today. For example, this client wanted to list her house. They bought it 3 years ago. The market was totally different when they bought it.
Mm-hmm.
They paid maybe a premium price. We did a little bit of an evaluation, didn't do many upgrades in 3 years, and the market, as you know, has probably
Yeah.
dropped a little bit.
Yep.
Uh, to as far as there's not as much buying power, and homes are not selling as expensive as they were, or as
Sure.
high. So, with her, and I'll just use that as a guinea pig, there was a conversation that I had. She knew me, so there was a little bit of a connection there.
Sure.
But she bought it for 200,000, 205, and she wants to list it for 250 with not very much improvements. She did a few things, paint, some flooring, but
Hmm.
nothing major.
Right.
Uh, and of course, the market's kind of tipped back. So when we went into it, I knew a little bit about the house. It's actually a house I listed, and then she bought, and now she's listing. So I knew a little bit about the property. I go into it, and she had some expectations out of the gate. So I
Right.
took in the back of my mind, looked at the property, and at the end of the day, I told her, we can list at what you want. That is probably going to be the highest that I could justify myself listing for.
Sure.
So as long as you understand that that may be a higher number than what the market is asking, we can still do it because it's within a certain price point of what I feel like it could sell for. Now, if she was
Hmm.
$100,000 apart, now it depends on the price of the home. I'm sure you know
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
it's $500,000 home and they're wanting to list for 600, it's still a little steep.
Yeah.
But if it's a $200,000 house and they want to list for three, more than likely it's not going to sell.
Right, 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 right.
So, we weren't that far apart. So that's kind of my main goal, is to make sure that the seller doesn't overprice their house. And there's a lot of things that
Hmm.
are going to determine if it's overpriced or not. In my opinion, sometimes sellers put a little bit of their own sentimental or emotional value into the product. Uh,
Fair.
and that's the hardest, especially if somebody's lived in a house for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whatever, or if it's a
Yeah,
family.
yeah, yeah.
So every situation is different, but overpricing is probably the one thing that is I guess you'd say non-negotiable. If somebody decides, hey, when they want to list at X amount of dollars, and I say my highest is X amount and it's nowhere near theirs,
Right,
I probably just politely have to say, hey, I'm just sorry. Realistically, I cannot see me selling in the way that I see me selling this house for you, or it actually selling itself. And the way I explain that is I put a lot of money into these listings.
right.
Uh, and if in my mind, have I been wrong? Yeah, maybe 2% out
Hmm.
of out of the time that I felt like I didn't take the listing, it got listed by another agent and it just happened to sell.
Right,
Uh, and I'm okay with that because I still felt like it shouldn't have sold. It was just maybe a fluke incident. Somebody with cash came in, didn't care what it appraised for, and just decided
right,
the price.
right, right, right.
But at that rate, what I would advise most people in that listing situation is, hey, this is my opinion. There's no concrete number,
Hmm.
um, but the reason why I don't like to overprice is because I don't want to give or provide a seller with false expectations.
It's crazy that you say all this, man, because we it's really crazy because you and I have literally the same business model and mentality. It's the proper expectations, right? And we tell clients up front is we try to give a predictable outcome,
Yeah.
right? We don't want to, overshoot and underdeliver.
Right.
And get kind of the same thing, when it talks about, prepping up a client, like, hey, understand, I'm going to ask for these documents up front. Now, we do a really good job of scrubbing it, but something may be questioned by the underwriter, which may spawn you to get another document. But like we always try to shoot worst case for their cash to close, their monthly payment. So, people like surprises, just not the surprise of like, hey, I quoted you at 5 grand to close. You got to bring 7 grand now, right? And I think,
And sometimes when you're tight with money, that $2,000 may be
yeah,
hard to get.
it'd be huge, right? So, and I think you bring up really good points, man, because it's your name, right? It's your name out there. And
Sure.
if you have these unrealistic expectations, or if you know for sure it's not going to sell for maybe what they have, their emotional price that they want to put on it,
Right.
then it kind of, puts you in a spotlight where you're like,
Right.
well, maybe the neighbor 2 houses down or somebody else sees it like, hey, Kartik's got this listing, but it's not selling. Let me go try a different agent,
Right.
So yeah.
That's
So
right. That's right.
yeah,
And it does. I think you brought up a good point too. It's my name on that
yeah,
sign,
yeah,
and if I priced it, most people are going to look at me, not my seller priced it that way. Even though sometimes I do take my seller's number
yeah.
because they want it, as long as I can justify it. At the end of the day, I chose to
Right.
market advertise that property at that price.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, and I think that's a really good business model, man, because I think that really does help your referral source, right? You're straight up with people. There's no sugarcoating. There's no beating around the bush. It's like, hey, this is what I realistically think this house is worth.
Yeah.
You may have a different opinion on that, and that's fine. I just may not be a fit for you. So
Exactly. And I think at the end of the day, that's what you have to make sure of is like,
yeah.
are we going to work well together? And I think every agent deserves to have that value instilled in them that
Yeah.
I'm not desperate.
Right.
There can be a time where I am like, man, I'm going to take it no matter what. I don't have any listings. Business is slow,
Yeah.
and I want to help somebody, even though we may not be on the same page. Sometimes you got to take the risk.
Yeah.
In this business, it's a very high risk business because, as I mentioned before,
Hmm.
some agents may not, and some do. I can't speak for everyone. I know I spend a lot of money
Sure.
carrying the listing,
Right.
whether that's helping, and some of it's not like necessarily monetary as far as my advice. I feel
Sure.
like just like an attorney, if they give you advice, they're going to have a retainer.
Yeah.
Value in what I know as far as advising somebody to stage or how to make their house look. I pay for photography. A lot of my listings, I do 3D tours. That costs extra money, drone footage. And then beyond that, which those should be standards with
Yeah.
any seller to have professional photography expectations. And it still blows my mind this day and age. I mean, it costs money. That's what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
you want an agent to invest in your listing. That's what part of that commission is paying for is my
You're right.
investing.
Yeah.
The other thing is obviously we go an extra step and we do a lot of social media videography. We
Mm.
do the videography to help enhance the listing in other ways, just besides some basic 3D tour.
Yeah.
Uh, the way that people search nowadays and the way that people stream on social media, it's crucial to have different perspectives of a home. And I think that's one thing that a seller needs to know is like, hey, if even if you overprice it, the reason why I may not take it is because
Mhm.
I may put $1,000 to $2,000 in a listing before it's even live.
Right.
And I think that there's a very slim to zero chance that I could potentially make that money back because I don't think the house will sell.
Right.
Those things that I contemplate prior to actually executing a listing agreement.
Nice. Yeah, and and again, I can tell you, like, seeing, stuff on the market. We use Real Tracks. I don't know how often you guys use. I don't know if you guys use Real Tracks.
We don't. We our MLS is a little bit different.
Okay.
So I know it's like two totally different platforms.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, I know that Clarksville agents use Real Tracks.
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny, man, because some of my top agents here, we'll be chit chatting, and they'll send me an address and say, "Can you believe, this is a $700,000 listing?" The agent didn't even care to wipe off the camera lens on their phone before taking it. It's like
I
this,
got their
like,
finger in the corner of the picture.
yeah, yeah, and it's just like it's mind blowing, and it's like, hey, this house has been on the market for 126 days, and it's like, well, you can't really judge the house based on these pictures that look like they were taken back in the 2000s, you know?
Presentation. I
Yeah,
mean, and there's a
yeah,
lot of different factors to listing, and that's one main factor for sure.
yeah, yeah. Well, cool, man. And then so. I want you to kind of talk about your market, right? I can tell you right here in Clarksville, it's definitely cooled off for sure. I think it's definitely softened, and I think with us being a heavy VA town, we do have that constant cycle of people coming in and out, so it keeps business steady to a certain
Yeah.
extent. But it's definitely again a softening. So people who are so used to, hey, my house needs to sell in 30 days. It's like, man, that's going to be a little bit of a crunch because, that's just not our market currently. It could
Right.
take you 60 days, maybe even 90 days if you're, depending on, location and the price.
Yeah.
So what is that about the same about where you're at?
Yeah, so as far as expectations of what sell time is, obviously it's increased since 2021, 22, even in
Hmm.
23. We still had a pretty fast market in 23. My business actually has started slowing down, and there's a lot of factors. I made a
Yeah.
video the other day, and one of the main factors is obviously the presidency and the election, and now that things are starting to the wheels are starting to spin on these changes,
Yeah.
a lot of people are concerned with these tariffs, everything getting expensive. Everybody talks about the price of eggs,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think what we're seeing in this market is just like anybody that prioritizes things. What do you prioritize? Food, water, shelter.
Yeah.
Uh, if people can't afford shelter as far as a home, they're
Yeah.
going to continue to rent.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Um, and it's harder obviously to justify now buying a home because obviously you're saying the same thing. The interest rates across the nation, they're
Yeah.
in the 6.5 right now. So has it slowed down? Yes. Has homes started sitting on the market longer? Yes. We're seeing the over $400,000-$500,000 houses sitting a little bit longer. Those sub $300,000 houses, as long as they're mostly turnkey, they're
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
Those homes are definitely still moving because it's still what we consider affordable.
Yeah.
But yeah, even in compared to the Tennessee market, I think it's very similar. The one thing I will say, kind of doing some research and knowing with experience with my parents, they bought a new construction.
Okay.
That is one thing, and I can only speak of Western Kentucky. That's the lake areas, Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley, the
Mhm.
counties, Lyon County, McCracken, Marshall. Callaway County. So those are all pretty much the 6 or 7 surrounding counties in this area of Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't have new construction.
Mm.
It has been such a nightmare. And when you do have it, there's fewer and far between contractors that are willing to do the work.
Right.
And once you have somewhat of a monopoly of, or I guess it wouldn't be called a monopoly, I guess it's just supply and demand,
Yeah.
that there's a huge demand for contractors and there's not a lot of them. These
Hmm.
contractors are going to charge more here. So, for example, my parents bought a house at 170 ish, between 170 and 175 a square foot.
Okay.
If you could build that home and find contractors to build homes here for that price, even 2,000 square foot homes,
Hmm.
they'd sell quickly.
Really?
There's not enough contractors in this area, and when, like I said, when there are, they're gonna, in
Hmm.
my opinion, overprice. Now, I can't. I guess you'd say undervalue a con. I know that work is hard,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
But you got my parents moved Ross Farms Boulevard area.
Yeah. I do
I think
tons and tons of loans out in Ross
yeah,
Farms. Yeah.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
all new development over there.
Yeah.
But there's 3 or 4 different contractors
Yeah.
that are building. So
Yeah.
there's not
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
contractor that can kind of have a grasp on all these home buyers that
Hmm.
want to buy and say, "Oh, I'm going to charge this or I'm going to charge this because I can."
Yeah.
They have to stay within certain pricing because there's going to be
Because of
some,
competition.
yeah, there's competition.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we're not getting here in this area. Is contractors are willing to build spec homes or take the chance of building spec homes, finding land, building spec homes, or developing subdivisions that are affordable.
Right.
Again, you find a contractor that's willing to buy a subdivision or willing to buy some land and develop it, and you put $200,000 and $300,000 houses, 1,500 to 2,000 square feet. I think they'll sell all day.
Really? Huh.
100%.
Maybe that's something to pitch to some of the builders here, man. Because there's plenty of build. I mean, like to be fair, man, Clarksville is capped in the aspect of I can't tell you how many builders have saturated the market. Before it was a little bit different. We had I'd say at least a solid 6 confirmed builders that we all knew has been
Yeah,
around for a while.
yeah.
Now it's fully saturated. Now I'm seeing contracts between people that like, where the hell did you come from? Like I
Yeah,
ain't never heard of you.
yeah,
But again, it's because it's so saturated. But I was like,
yeah.
yeah, man, I think you bring up a good point. If you go to a market that's not tapped into, yeah, I mean,
It's not.
yeah,
I can tell you right now, it's not. And I'm speaking what today's March 4th, right?
yep,
2025, and it's been, I think, an ongoing problem for the last few years of just not having a workforce here. Now,
true.
again, there's a lot of factors to why people may not work in this area.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I think it's one of those things that some people, if they're going to build, they're going to overpay to build, in my opinion. By no means do I ever think I could justify paying. Again, there's a lot of factors that come to price per square foot, so that's not the only factor when we consider the value of a home.
Right.
But I would be shocked if you could find people that could build homes in this area for 160, $170 a square foot like they do in Clarksville.
Right.
Again, the market, pre-COVID, you could find homes that you could buy for $120 a square foot, $130 a square
Easily.
foot.
Easily. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
we can tell the market's drastically changed. You're $40 to $50 a square foot higher for a
Right.
home in this area and everywhere, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, as far as existing homes, I mean, we get back to, noting what the market conditions are like. You and I both know that drives existing home prices up.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I think
Yeah.
that's what's going to be a major problem because nowadays people don't want to do the work. So let's just, for example, I find clients that don't care to do a little bit of cosmetic work
Right.
and be able to build some sweat equity into the home they buy.
Yeah.
There's more people, in my opinion, that don't want to do the work
Nope.
because one, they may not have the knowledge or skill, or two,
Right.
they don't want to take the time to hire contractors because they can't find any.
Right.
So they would much rather find turnkey homes or new builds and pay a little bit more
Yep.
for those types of homes rather than, like I said, pre-existing homes that need a ton of work and they're already overpriced as it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And I think, we kind of see the same thing on my side, the lending side is there's a lot of people who are first time home buyers.
Yeah.
and they have the, the champagne taste on a beer budget,
Mhm.
and they want everything under the sun, but they are capped at a certain monthly payment. And I was like,
Yeah.
I always say, we have to have a come to Jesus moment, because realistically, what you're looking for is just, it's going to take a miracle, an
Yeah.
absolute miracle. And I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not your real estate agent. You go talk to them. I'm going to give the parameters based on what you told me, what you want to be comfortable with for monthly payment.
Pavement. Yeah, that's
Here,
it.
yeah, and I was like, here's the box that you put yourself in. Not saying it's a
Mhm.
bad thing. You budgeted out. You're financing, right? So it's like, not saying I couldn't get you pre-approved for more. It's not saying you can go up and purchase price. You can. It's just, you told me this is your budget, your monthly payment, so this is where you need to look. And I think then, that kind of like you, they see these houses in their price range, and they're like, yeah, we don't want to put the work into it and all that. They want turnkey. And I'm like, well, guys, it's a starter home. There's nothing wrong with, like, maybe it's a little dated, cool, you know, do a little bit of work, live in it for a couple of years, update it, let it appreciate a little bit, and
Yeah.
see where your value's at. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a lost, it's definitely like a lost drive in a lot of people.
And just because, like I said, our generation, I feel like, I'm 30, I'll be 38 this year.
Yeah,
And I lean on my dad. Like his generation, he's 60, he'll be 65 this year.
yeah,
And I mean, that generation, they love to do that type of stuff, or they had the skill set, and a lot of it's common sense. I mean, we have YouTube, but I don't think it's necessarily, I just don't think people want to work. Like they already work so much at their actual job
yeah,
because, from how generations have changed, I feel like, jobs are a lot more stressful now, and some people have to have two jobs to make ends meet.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
they have one or two jobs, and then they got to come home and work on their house. They're like, man, they're exhausted.
yeah,
So I think honestly, that's part of the reason. And again, at that point where you got to have the skill set, like, yeah, you can maybe paint. I
yeah,
can, but
yeah,
if I were to have to install flooring, or, I could change some light fixtures, stuff like little stuff like that. But
yeah,
like when you start getting a little minor electrical, plumbing, that's where people are like, I don't know what to do. So I'd
yeah,
rather pay somebody to do it, or I just find a house that's already done
yeah,
and
yeah,
not have to worry about this. And I like your approach. Whenever I sold cars for 6 months when I started my career in
mm,
life, I guess you'd say, just and what I learned a lot is most car salesmen ask what type of payment you want to be in.
yeah,
That's typical. It doesn't matter if it's
yeah,
100% or 20% interest rate.
yeah,
It's what payment do you want? So I
yeah,
like that approach because I've been having that conversation with a lot of my buyers.
yeah,
Hey guys, I'm not trying to sound like a car salesman. I'm not a car salesman. I tried it. It's not for me.
yep,
Nothing against car salesmen. I think they're great. Everybody's good at certain things. It just wasn't for me.
yep,
But from a realtor's perspective, I said, guys, your lender can pre-approve you based on your income, debt to income, and a few other factors. But they
right,
can pre-approve you for a max amount. Does
yep,
that mean you need to spend up to
no,
that? No, and
yeah,
that's where I respect what you just said. Is you can pre-approve your clients, higher if you want.
hmm,
What are you comfortable with? And you have to be, because you don't know what they spend on data. They may buy
yeah,
bucks every single day, and they may buy, a lot of toys all the time. Just little gizmos and gadgets.
yeah,
Well, at the end of the day, you still have to afford that monthly mortgage payment. And if you
right,
have a lot of other wants expenditures, I
yeah,
guess you say, and not things you need, you just have that habit of wanting a lot of things. You may need to consider what your mortgage payment looks like, because even though the numbers make sense for us to let you borrow that money,
yeah.
you may not still be able to afford it because of your personal finances.
Yeah, man. And yeah, it's kind of like, having that conversation up front, again, the proper expectation, because especially from my side,
Yeah.
a lot of the times when people are shopping around, they just tell me, hey, I got pre-approved by this lender over here. They said I was approved up to this much. I was like, okay, hey, well, they kind of cover monthly payment with you. Well, no. I was like, okay. So I was like, are you currently actively looking at some houses with your agent? Yeah. I was like, okay. Well, can you tell me at least, do you have a budget in mind? And sometimes when they tell me, it's not even close to what, that pre-approval amount. And I'm like, okay, again, let's sit back, let's dial it back, because this is why it's important to talk to a lender who cares more about just, hey, I pre-approved you. Here's your button. Here's your piece of paper.
Yeah.
Go out and go shopping. It's like, well, let's set some parameters, right? Um, and and I tell everybody, you just don't be house poor, man. Like it's not fun. I was like, my job
100%.
is to
100%.
make sure you can get into a house, but you're not eating cheese and crackers every night, right?
That's right.
Um,
Budget for your vacations,
yeah,
budget for your kids. Obviously, that's a big expense
yeah,
sometimes. Miscellaneous. But I think that's where sometimes people, value Dave Ramsey
yeah,
to an extent. A lot of it, and maybe it's just me because I've been very conservative my whole life. I can naturally budget money. I know how much I'm making and I know how much I'm spending.
yep,
Some people don't have a consciousness of that as
hmm
well. And I think that's why they rely on people like Dave Ramsey. Do I think he's a genius? By no means. I think he
yeah,
spits a lot of common sense.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but some people don't have common sense when it comes to personal finances, and they may be super smart at what they do and make a ton of money. I've
yeah,
met a lot of people that make 150,000 dollars a year,
yeah,
and they're still poor.
yeah,
So we can't be like personal admins or assistants or financial
right,
advisors. We can just kind of put things to perspective. Hey, if I were you, if you spend this much money here, here, here,
yeah,
and you kind of look at your gross income, you need to be able to somewhat budget what your maximum personal expenses are, utilities, this, that, and then
yeah.
make sure that you can afford this house payment.
Yeah, and I really do try to drive that home with a lot of people in the aspect of, if they've been renting, right? I was like, okay, well, just understand, when you own a home, it's just a tad different. And so, there's a lot, the expenses are typically going to be a little bit more, like your
Yeah,
electricity is probably going to go up, that water bill is probably going to go up a little bit. And, it's a conversation with them of like, you know, understand like there's no more landlord to fix your stuff. So if something
that's right.
happens, you can't just call up your landlord like, yo, come fix it. This
Yeah.
is now a you problem.
Insurance is
So
going up every year. Taxes seem to go
yeah,
up every year.
yeah,
That's on you. That was included in your rent. We understand that, but
yeah.
those are things you have to button. Now, some people escrow, so I guess that's a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I try to be very cautious of that and I kind of, prep them up for that, saying, okay, well, my job is to try to utilize your money, right? So people, when they come to me with money, everybody wants to put it all down towards the down payment. And I was like,
Right.
well, like, strategically, what if we can make your payment happy where it needs to be,
Yeah.
and then you tuck away some money for some rainy day? Because
Right.
if,
Right.
even with new construction, I tell people, even with new construction, man, stuff happens all the time. You have a 1 year
100%.
builder's warranty, which is fine.
Nah,
But
they don't cover a broken window. I'll tell you that.
right, yeah, and I was like,
My dad just had that happen. So yeah,
really?
you're right. I mean, there's
Yeah,
expenses in any home, whether it's new
yeah.
or used. So
Yeah, yeah. So, and and I just try to triple check with everybody, just make sure it's like, okay, hey, you told me this, you're good with it. So, the way I typically do it, man, with clients now is, we're all in a group chat, point blank,
yeah,
period. We're in a group chat because there's a lot of accountability, a lot of transparency.
yeah,
I try to keep everybody in line because I don't want it to be a game of, telephone, whereas like the buyer tells you something, now you tell the buyer something, now the buyer interprets it a little different, tries to explain it to me, and I'm like, all right, now like we're kind of in a clusterfuck at this
So
point,
you have
you know?
you have a group chat with your buyer and your agent.
Yes.
Okay, got you. Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, I think
Yeah.
you're everybody's on the same page. You can have a separate
Oh
uh,
yeah.
thread with just your
Oh,
buyer,
1,000%.
but I think transparency again. Just we're held in the dark as real estate
Yeah.
agents. Sometimes if you don't have a good lender on the other side that doesn't communicate, you're like, man, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what's
Yeah.
going on. And sometimes a buyer's reaching out to the agent,
Yeah.
like, hey, what's going on? Well, I don't know. That's
Mm.
between you and your lender. That's a
Yeah.
lender question. So I think that helps, and I respect that too, having kind of open communication between your agent and your lender.
Yeah, so when it comes to like the personal finance and stuff, like when it gets to the nitty gritty,
Yeah,
that's
that's the
that separate chat, right?
yeah,
But if it's like to give you an update, like a weekly update saying, "Hey, this is where we're at,"
yep,
your appraisal's in,
right,
whatever, right? That's where that chat belongs to.
100%.
And I tell everybody like, "Hey, if you have any questions, you can put it in here, and if I need to message you separately, or if your agent needs to message you separately, we will. But this is just really here to kind of keep you updated throughout the whole process,
Right,
and again, just
right,
so we're all on the same page."
yeah,
Okay, well, cool, man. And then so lastly, I am curious, and I always like to ask agents outside of Clarksville because obviously Clarksville is a heavy VA market, right? Heavy
right.
government market. Is there do you run into a lot of VA buyers at all with where you're at?
Stephanie, my co-agent, she's a veteran
Okay.
herself. A lot of times, sometimes when you think about it, some veterans like to work with other veteran type agents.
Yeah, yeah.
Me personally, in the last year, I've probably
Mhm.
had three.
Okay.
Actually had one in January that closed. He got referred to me. Super cool guy. He uses VA benefits.
Yep.
He shopped three lenders. That's
Mm,
typically what I do on the agent side. Obviously, I'd love to say that I have one guy I send people to.
mhm.
I've learned real quick in this business, like you can have a top three on everything.
Yeah.
If you have one and that one person screws the entire situation up between you and your buyer and them, your buyer's going to look at you because you referred that one person.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my rule of thumb. So he shopped three, and there's a veteran lender
Mhm.
that says he will beat any VA rate from any bank. And so he shopped them, and
Mhm.
sure enough, he beat every other because this guy he did shop all three
Yep.
that I told him, hey, just go to these three people. I
Mhm.
work well with them. And he went to all three of them, and sure enough, that VA lender, he's a veteran, of course, he's a lender. He beat them all.
Yeah.
Uh, whatever he does to guarantee that, I don't know. He owns his own mortgage company,
There you go.
which he has a lot of control.
Yeah.
What he does. And so that may have been it, but irregardless, like no, I don't. I'd like to say that I'd foresee getting more here in the future, but it's unpredictable. The
Yeah.
VA buyers are, and I don't have an affiliation with like the VA
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Veterans United, different VA
Yeah.
specific lenders. I don't have a
Mhm.
relationship. I know that some people they collaborate with those VA type lenders and they have
Yeah.
a good relationship. That's kind of the next thing I was going to say was this VA client. He actually was working with another agent that was
Mm.
referred to by his original lender.
Ooh,
And so basically, he not only fired his agent, he fired his lender too. And I don't
jeez.
think he fired his lender. He just his agent didn't say because his agent's not going to refer him to shop two or three other lenders
Right.
because he's got a relationship with that lender.
Yeah. Yeah.
He didn't know anything. He's a first time home buyer.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that, us as professionals,
Yeah.
first time home buyers are very unknown to a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's a luxury for us based on the value and the knowledge we have
Yeah.
to provide them with all options.
Yeah.
And sometimes we forget that we got to do what's best for the client, even if that means that I'm friends with two lenders and I should be sending those two lenders. It's not me that's buying this house, it's my client. So that
Yeah.
client there's options. And that's where, he found me through a referral of a friend of a friend. And that friend's like, dude, not saying your current agent's bad, but you need to talk to Kartik. He will get stuff done. And literally, I mean, we got him under contract. He shopped lenders. I helped him shop inspectors.
Yeah.
He did all. I mean, and I think that again that gratification of knowing I didn't know this guy. He got referred
Yeah.
to me, even though I had the connection with a friend of a friend. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I knew that I did everything I could for that guy without being biased to certain people. And I think he appreciated it. I said, Carter, I appreciate you giving me. He's like, I wouldn't have saved a 0.5% or 1/4% if you didn't give me three options and advise me to shop them all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, and I think, um it's definitely, like I definitely see from your side where, you give out three names. I know for me it's a little bit different. I know, we've only had a transaction together, but I know, some of the agents I work really closely with,
Yeah.
man, we've been running and gunning and connected at the hip since like day one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing with me is, it's not, I'm not, I'm still, I'm not too big to care, but I'm big enough to give you the perfect service, right? So
Right.
like, for me, I gauge my work capacity, right?
Yeah.
And I know what I can and can't do. And so like, knock on wood, I've never, there's never been a deal that dropped out from underneath me, from my side. Now, if it's appraisal
Yes.
or something, cool, whatever.
Different story. Yeah.
Yeah. But what I tell a lot of people, especially when they're shopping, man, see, I'm not going to be that lender. I'm totally different from that lender that you just talked about, where they talk about have the best rate, best cost. Because to be fair, man, truth be told, I will never have the cheapest rate. I'll never have the cheapest cost. Like it's inevitable. Like
Yeah.
a lender could beat me, then somebody could beat that lender. It's just a vicious chain until you
Oh
get
yeah.
to, yeah, yeah,
It's not that's what I failed to mention. It's not
yeah,
always about your closing costs and
yeah, yeah,
interest.
yeah,
Those are two big factors in a
yeah,
relationship because this is a long-term investment for
yeah,
somebody.
yeah, yeah,
And so, you want to make sure you are, I guess you'd say not necessarily shopping all the time, but you're just making sure that that lender is fit for you. And
yeah,
sometimes the value of the service is going to be more
yeah,
important to certain people. People that shop at Walmart are always going to shop at Walmart. Okay. People that want better quality things naturally,
yeah,
I'm not saying Walmart's not quality. No, I'm not taking anything away from them. But that's the same thing. I get that. Do you want
yeah,
Dollar General and Walmart service, or do you
yeah,
want, Gucci service,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
They're two different products and it's two different costs.
yeah,
And it really depends on what you value the most. Do you
yeah,
care to rebuy that jacket every year? Because, where you bought it from before, it's a cheaper brand and it threads and you got it. Or do you want something that's going to be more lasting? And again, I see where you care about your clients because
yeah.
I'm assuming that you keep up with your clients.
Oh yeah,
Pretty consistently, maybe quarterly or bi yearly, whatever.
yeah, yeah,
That's part of the value that we have to have for our
yeah,
clients. And maybe I was a little bit more expensive on my listing fees, right?
yeah.
But the quality of service and
Right.
the overall product, I think, is huge. And I think that's what you do more than a lot of probably lenders do is you tell them things they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
That's literally, yeah. That's
Yeah.
literally what I say in a lot of my videos.
And you may lose business, but at least they
Yeah.
know you're being straight up.
I've lost. I can't tell you, man, how many times where I've just like, because I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. If I genuinely have a deal where that lender's just, kick my ass over the place, well, I'm like, well, what more can I do? Like,
That's
I
right.
mean, like you said, you were car salesmen. I tell everybody, use the same analogy. I was like, it's not a used car salesman where I go and take this and let me bring it to my manager. Let me see if I can do any better. I know my limitations. If it's
That's right.
within the ballpark, maybe I could eat something to, make it work and get
Make it
close.
work. That's right.
But
That's right.
if it's too far out of scope for me, I'm just like, hey, look, they just got me beat. You need to go lock in with them. Don't
Yeah.
even bother shopping around because they ain't touching nobody else.
Yeah,
Like,
they're not. And
yeah,
I think that it's healthy competition, I think, to a certain point.
yeah,
Sometimes there are desperate times, and you know what your limitation is. I know what
yeah,
mine is too.
yeah,
And there's certain clients like, hey, this agent's going to do it for half the fees. Go with that agent. Like
yeah, yeah,
I'm not in a position, and sometimes again, you have to really rethink of the position you're in at that
yeah,
current
yeah,
moment. Like, do I need business? Everybody needs
yeah,
business.
yeah,
I can't pay my bills or put food on the table if I
yeah.
don't have business. But there's also a point where you want to be respected, valued, appreciated.
Hmm.
And if you're undercutting your business value for one,
Yeah,
you're gonna you're gonna continue to habit of that. And
yeah,
I think that's what hurts businesses most is they do not know their value. And sometimes the competition gets ahead of them. They're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to cut my value because I want to stay
yeah.
within the competition. Well, sometimes you got to let the competition win because at the end of the day, like
You know your worth, man. Yeah,
you
you
know
know your
exactly
worth.
you know your worth.
Yeah,
That's
you
right.
know your worth, man. And I always say it, to a lot of my top agents too, if they vent to me that they lost out from somebody because they decided to list with somebody else, I'm like, look, you're not a discount agent. I'm not a discount lender. Like,
That's right.
I'm here. I know what I can provide you. I know what I'm capable of. I know my
That's right.
guarantee. Like, hey, we're gonna make it to the closing table as long as you don't do anything stupid. I promise you, we're gonna close. Guaranteed,
Yeah.
we're good.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's just like, I've had people nickel and dime me over, a few $100 for closing costs. And I'm like,
Closing costs. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, all
That's,
right. Like,
yeah. I mean, and like you said, at the end of the day, you
yeah,
can make it work.
yeah.
Your
I'll make it
ability,
work.
you'll
Yeah.
make it work. And I think sometimes we do have to take a little bit of a cut
Hmm.
to make things work. And
Yeah.
that's all a part of the negotiating process in our business.
Yeah.
But there's only so much that we can do, and there
Yeah.
always, you said it's always going to be somebody that can beat you. Okay.
Guaranteed. Yeah.
But I know that one thing will top me over other people, and again, it's me.
Yeah.
Nobody can beat me. like
Yeah.
me as a person overall,
Yeah.
nobody can beat that. It's just
Yeah.
I've got to prove to that client that this is what I'm about.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell everybody, man, I'm not here to sell mortgages, man. I'm literally here to sell you my education and to give you the experience that you deserve. Cause I think the stat is like 64 or 67% of buyers have a horrible transaction, man, because either the communication between the lender or the agent, it starts to backfire and it starts to go up in shambles. And they have a horrible experience. So, you don't want to be part of that, that statistic. So
No,
yeah.
no. We've
Yeah.
both been through that, I'm sure. I've
Yeah.
had a couple of, I mean, kind of the one that we had, the one,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
a tough one.
Yeah.
I unfortunately, I felt bad for the clients. I think there were some unrealistic expectations during that process. Uh,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, we made it work.
Yeah.
Was the most satisfying experience for that client? Probably not.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that we couldn't control at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think, but see, and again, that's where like I don't, even if I, and I never met you during that time, like it was first time ever meeting you and
Yeah,
doing a deal with you,
yeah,
but you answered the phone call, you were very communicative, so I'm like, I'm gonna have this dude's back because that's all I asked for is like just communicate with me and I'm good.
yeah,
So
yeah.
whenever he used to try to vent to me, I'm like, all right, well, time out. I was like, Kartik's not like that, man. I was like, I'm pretty sure you're just misunderstanding. Let me ask him because I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure again that's why that experience happens and then he'll like yeah no you're right man no he's a great dude and I was like no man he's been great to work with man it's just I told him sometimes you got to take your emotions out I know it's difficult and I know like buying a new build can be a little stressful for you but just trust me he's gonna take good
There's
care
a
of you
lot
yeah
that went into that specific situation, especially with
yeah
the combination of selling.
yeah
And again, some people are just not used to buying new construction. Actually, that was one of the first new constructions that I sold.
yeah
So it was a new experience for me too, and
yeah
that may have been a part of it, just like not knowing certain steps to new construction. And then on top of that, VA has certain restrictions on new construction as well.
yeah
So that added a few steps, but at the end of the day, we did the best we could, and that's all we can. That's all we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. No, he periodically, man, he's actually popped into the office a few times. He's like,
Oh,
hey,
really?
man. Yeah. Yeah. He loves my
Yeah.
assistant, Lana. He's like, hey, where's Lana at? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, actually, man, be honest with you. She moved to Ocala, Florida, man. Like, that's her hometown. She still works for me just remote, but
Yeah.
she's no longer in the office. But,
That's
um,
crazy. Yeah, like I said, I don't think my relationship with him was probably as positive as yours. And with that being said, sometimes that's just the way it
yeah,
goes. Do
I
I feel
translate.
like
Yeah.
my business is going to suffer? No, not at all. I mean,
No.
you still want to be there if a client needs you. I will. If he called me tomorrow or today, I'm
Yeah.
answering the phone call.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I just know that sometimes clients they're never going to truly express how they felt, and sometimes silence is a pretty clear indicator.
Yeah. No, I feel that, man. I feel that. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been
Absolutely,
we're
man.
creeping up right about an hour,
Yeah,
so I appreciate you coming on.
absolutely.
Hopefully we can get together and do another one of these. Or dude,
Yes,
if if
100%.
you're if you're ever in Clarksville, man, visiting your parents, dude, hit me up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, that's another thing. We're when we travel, I usually go there at night just for like dinner and stuff. I'm
yeah, yeah,
rarely during the day unless like something happens with my dad and he needs some help. But
yeah, yeah.
if I'm there during business hours during the weekday, I'll definitely let you know.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, let me know. So, all right,
Same deal.
man. Well,
Appreciate the
so
opportunity.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but this will go on YouTube, man, Spotify, and all that. You'll be
Yeah.
tagged on Facebook and all that stuff. So,
All right,
cool.
man. Yeah, I'll be sure to share it for sure.
All right, man. We'll see
All
you
right, see you, man. Bye.
later.
Every single beef, I had to let it be. Spend a lot of time wasting energy. That ain't make sense to me logically. But I feel way better when I walk in peace. Please don't bring the gossip